Otumfuo Dr. Doctoratɛ the second.
Chancellor, yes, you run a dama on one and Makwan, Emma and Danny Abudu and Sansama by and Okrobia Santikoto Kwahine, Abuama Sumje Abaho, and T. Okahuasan found you run education funder of Frabenia or T. Abuani Pabe, I'm a name for Sua Nipa Enya, our education fund and Yan for Soketwakra, Okasa found say, and here say university, BTC Cape Coast, a boy Rabaso. Now, almost the Musrama and Quatentini and Hoden, Ado, Asumjie, and Yami Ayina Maya, Ama Yura, Pepensword and Abedrin, and the University Aboyura Basu to say, Otumfuo Doctor or C0ST-the second or no, and Asantehene Yabona Basune, now Fay and Ayura Babekasa, and to Unsen Tahra and Kukrenya. Eboa na sa pepepe ene te se kukuranya ene ntahira wa ha omudi di ewura nim ansa na krobia asante kotoko yene aba be kasa sabre ntahira ene kukuranya ene di ehim no na sa Asantehene wura eba be kasa eno no nti ubepi mu Cape Coast University ha afei na yewura yede abosobode na abono ni nyina eya asomdue mpuntu a wapra ma Ghana ni nyina wayene kama pa yewura ginem ema World Bank abra Ghana ekwa nwunyehie mu no Asantehene wura ono ani ginem a World Bank ema Ghana bosia yiye free hipikim ni nyina university eka ho asem se yehwe ne ma Asantehene wura aya abro adwene ne ntiase so
Asantehene kasangen
Osaji fogu nyagwasio kra Asantehene kasangen
Kotokwanyine kase krobianyine kasangen
Kotokwanyine kase krobianyine kasangen
Mema krobia irifia ngomane kotokwingen
Mema krobia irifia ngomane kotokwingen
Asante chantrochmo champon nufringen
Asante chantrochmo champon nufringen
Asante sesebo sumandite
Asante sesebo sumandite
Robia Asantehene kasangen
Robia Asantehene kasangen
C0ST-the modi nwa wisio
C0ST-the modi nwa wisio
Wan ne benya sejuso supani ni akwaba kuma sika poba no
Wan ne benya sejuso supani ni akwaba kuma sika poba no
Obinya se bia nko bebi
Obinya se bia nko bebi
Amana tedi feba dem lefe kasangen
Amana tedi feba dem lefe kasangen
Chewani tofu mojo nungen
Chewani tofu mojo nungen
Odafudade ochmo champon nufringen
Odafudade ochmo champon nufringen
O sori krobio
Ani Asantehene mu
Obinya se bia nko bebi
Obinya se bia
Gwasingen
Wosaji fogu nyagwasingen
Asantehene kasangen
Asantehene kasangen
Wo kubede to bebe dem lefa gunya gwasa ajumna chemera
My brother Chancellor, I hope you would permit me to go ahead without going through what you've said in terms of recognizing people here in relation to protocol. So, let me express my profound gratitude to the Chancellor, Chair and members of Council of this great institution for the honor bestowed on me this morning. So, it is an honor I accept with humility and proudly share with Nananom, whose joint efforts have contributed to everything we have achieved in the 25 years of our reign. And they are well represented here with my brother Asantehene, who is chairman of the Council of State. They've all been very supportive of me within the last 25 years. Nanaman Pohima is signaling me and everything, I know. The establishment of one institution may not count very much in the scheme of national development, but I will suggest that one of the many visionary acts of our first president, Dr. K1ng Ghana, was a decision to establish a university focused on education with the task of producing the quality manpower needed for the education of the people of Ghana. And there could not be a better place to have the honor of hosting such a university than the city of Cape Coast. Osaberima, your city is where the light of higher education in this nation was lit, inspiring a thirst for knowledge and drawing thousands from every corner of the land to drink from its fountain of knowledge. We owe it to the churches for their initiative in establishing and laying the foundations of secondary education on a grand scale. From Infantsipim and Wesley Girls School to Adesado College, Holy Child and St. Augustine's, the Methodist Church, the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church led the way in providing the best in education and in conditions of gender equality long before the value of inclusivity gained universal acceptance. This university, on whom we have to depend for the training of our teachers, stands as a crowning jewel of a city of enlightenment, from whose commanding hills and sandy beaches millions of the best brains in our land have been molded, have grown the best talents who have kept the administration of our nation. This university began life in 1962 as the University College of Education, in a special relationship with the University of Ghana, Legon, with the prime mandate of producing graduate teachers to meet the manpower needs of the Ghana Education Service. It seems unbelievable today to recall that its total enrollment as at that time was 155 students, split between two departments, the Department of Science and the Arts. And the whole concept was deemed controversial in some circles. However, it survived the political upheavals of the period, and in 1971, it attained the status of a fully fledged university with the right to grant its own degrees. The mandate of the university was expanded beyond the needs of education, and today it is a Belgian community of over 75,000 students from all disciplines. The founding fathers and their pioneering administrators have every reason to be proud of what they have bequeathed to the this time led by the Dean of the Faculty of Education of this university, Professor N.K. Zobo, to review the reform. The Professor Zobo Committee made social equity a fundamental thrust in the delivery of sound educational outcomes, arguing against the common entrance examination for the selection of pupils for secondary schools, as skewed in favor of children of the elite in society. Specifically, it recommended a new system which retained the 6-year primary school system, but split the secondary system into 3 years of junior high school and 2 years of senior secondary school lower division and 2 years of senior secondary upper division. The Zobo report formed the basis for the far-reaching reforms of 1987. In preparing for the restoration of constitutional rule in 1992, the Republican Constitution provided for free compulsory education for all children of school age within 10 years. The new government led by Flight Lieutenant Rawlins's government launched a program of free compulsory universal education in 1996. In a seminal study for the British Department of International Development, Nimoy Thompson and Leslie Casireford observed in 2008, broadly, the objectives of FQ were in line with the recommendations of the World Declaration on Education for All, adopted after the World Bank UN-sponsored World Conference on Education for All in Thailand in 1990. The declaration stated that every person, child, youth, and adult shall be able to benefit from educational opportunities designed to meet their basic learning needs, and all countries were required to achieve universal basic education by the year 2000. The rollout of FQ was followed by a National Education Forum in November 1999 to examine the prospects of Ghana moving towards compliance with the World Declaration on Education for All. Barely 2 or 3 years after, in 2002, another education sector review was undertaken to examine the outcome. Since then, every government has undertaken a serious review of education system. The troubling fact, however, is that each review has either been driven by austerity or constrained by fiscal malice and not necessarily by the desire to achieve their stated goals. So we've had to live constantly with a contradiction between governments holding education as a high priority only for education to become the first casualty of any fiscal downturn. Against such background, the mixed response to the recent free senior high school scheme has not been a surprise. The Minister of Education here would want to do more, but he doesn't have adequate funds to do what he wants to do. There's no doubt that the free senior high school program is the most audacious piece of social intervention in our Fourth Republic. The pre-independence program for free education covered primary education and later the university. The secondary sector was beyond the capacity of the state. None of the reforms since had dared move the dial through that space. The decision to take the plunge, therefore, had to be truly ambitious, and it is no wonder it has kept education at the top of national discourse. There is undoubted merit in the government argument that if we are preparing our children to compete in the global economy of today, then they should be entitled to the same level of basic education as children in other climates. Since basic education elsewhere encompasses secondary or high schools, it's only fair that we also upgrade our basic education. In that sense, therefore, offering free senior high school is doing no more than meeting the obligation to provide the basic education for all. It is not only in Ghana that this becomes relevant. In a background paper prepared for the International Commission on Financing Global Education Opportunity, Shakira Mustafa and Phillips Crowns noted with reference to primary schools products, the completion of primary school is no guarantee that children have acquired basic academic skills. Surveys in a number of low-income countries document that many adults who have received some schooling 5 or 6 years or less are functionally illiterate or enumerate. That is an experience Ghana identifies with, and it buttresses the case for upscaling basic education. But this cannot be that simple. It only underscores the enormity of the challenge associated with the changing dynamics of education and nation building in our times. Ghanaians accept education as a basic right of every child. All nations signed up through the United Nations and its agencies to provide basic education for all. In Africa, education is deemed so critical, the African Union has declared the this year the African Year of Education. In Ghana, it has been part of the objective of every government from as far apart as the nationalist government of limited self-rule in 1951. We see it not just as a human right, it is an economic necessity, an investment in the economic and social well-being of every nation. In the background paper already cited, the authors made the point that when any child fails to acquire basic skills needed to function as a productive responsible member of society, society as a whole, not to mention the individual child, loses. The cost of educating children is far outweighed by the cost of not educating them. Yet, though the cost of not providing education would ultimately be higher, nations have to contend in the first place with the overriding problem of mobilizing the resources needed to invest in education. Without the resources, even our most desirable goals cannot be achieved, and that sadly has been the problem not only for Ghana but for Africa. It is the reason we are obliged to make sure that our ambitions are matched by our pockets. As we have already noted, every educational reform undertaken in Ghana has been driven by financial constraints arising from national economic malice. Whereas in the developed world, educational reforms are undertaken to ensure the content of education matches the economic and social needs of society, here we are driven solely by what is available to spend in the fiscal space. It is for this reason that even an audacious scheme like the free senior high school, as I've mentioned, which one would expect to receive universal acclamation, has instead been mired in some controversy, with some blaming it for exacerbating the fiscal malice of the economy. And yet, even with that program, Ghana has yet to reach the universal benchmark for national spending on education as a percentage of gross domestic product. In the latest UNESCO World Education Finance Watch Report of 2024, the scorecard which monitors progress towards achieving the universal benchmark for spending on education showed that overall, only the high-income countries are more likely to be classified as either having achieved or having a high probability of 75% of achieving the 2025 benchmark for spending on education. The good news for us, however, is that Ghana is one of the only 15 developing countries confirmed as being on track to reach the benchmark in 2025. In effect, assuming the current program continues, we should meet the universal benchmark for spending on education to GDP. That certainly should be welcome. But if the focus is on the rebalancing of resources, the effect may well stir up more heat than light. Every dramatic increase in enrollment affects the physical resources and infrastructure of schools, affects learning materials, and above all requires a corresponding increase in the number of qualified teachers. Beyond these, as we have experienced more than once in the past 2 decades, every expansion at the secondary level has a huge impact on the tertiary sector, and yet at no time have we seen an attempt to coordinate the implementation of any secondary sector reform with the universities. When at a stroke, enrollment in senior high schools are doubled, the universities have to brace themselves for an inevitable surge in demand for undergraduate studies with no prior consideration for its effect on fiscal resources. Our universities are already bursting at the seams, with rising student population virtually overwhelming fiscal resources and infrastructure. It should be obvious that important as the senior high school may be, focus on it should not lead to a misalignment of resources, nor should it become the focus of all attention in national discourse. Rather, we should recognize the necessity to look at the challenge of education in its totality. First, we may do well to re-examine the structure of the education system from primary to secondary to tertiary education. Is the separation between junior and senior high school working? What has become of the products of junior high school who are unable to proceed to senior high school? How functional have the vocational institute become? How relevant have they been in the job market? Is the system providing for the critical middle level needs as we expected the polytechnic and technical universities to provide? Secondly, we need another look critically at the financing of education. What resources are available and how they are allocated to the various levels to ensure equity. This is at the root of all the discourse. Education is an expensive investment. The expenditure on buildings alone is huge, but buildings alone do not provide education. Learning and teaching materials must be available. In the 21st century, there should be no school without computers. without the means to provide the basic ICT skills. And we should ensure our teachers are reasonably remunerated for the critical service they provide. Thirdly, we need to reappraise the content of education from pre-tertiary to tertiary to see how far they go to meet the needs of the economy and society in this fast-changing world. There are many areas of the system crying for updating and many anomalies requiring correction. The ongoing prioritizing of STEM education is a step in the right direction, but it is necessary to caution about the risk of restricting it to an elite class and leaving the broader system with no knowledge of these critical skills. For the sake of equity, we should ensure equal opportunities for all to acquire these vital skills in their education journey. Education must lead the nation's response to the incredible challenges of climate change. If we are to fully appreciate the gravity of the threat as a concrete expression of our
do solemnly pledge
to fulfill my duties
as an alumnus of the University of Cape Coast. I pledge to use my knowledge, skills and experiences to the best of my ability for the advancement of learning and for the well-being of my community and country. I promise to be a loyal ambassador for my university to promote her welfare and maintain her reputation. I will endeavor in all my dealings to be known as a person of honor and repute, to bring respect to my alma mater. So help me God. Congratulations, Otumfuo.